Hi, welcome to our podcast. I'm Mary Abazia, and with me, of course, is Tom Spitali and Sean Wellham. And we love our job, and we love talking to clients about their problems. And sometimes we hear problems that are kind of interesting. And this one happens to be, what do I need to do with my budget surplus? It's the end of my accounting cycle, and if I don't use it, I'm going to lose it. So we thought we would tackle this one. So I'm going to go to Sean first on this. Sean, client has the situation is client has some money and they want to make sure that they're adding value. But what is your initial take on this?
Well, first, do no harm. So don't send it back. That's the first thing. Don't go back and say to FP&A, yeah, this money, I don't need it. You can have that back because that's not that sense. Although, in fact, we should talk about why that should be the sensible thing to do. Let's do that at the end in terms of a reform agenda for budget management. But in terms of what you could do that I always think it's about investing in something that's going to strengthen the long term. Things like, I'm not going to do a laundry list. I'll give some examples. Where do we see deficits when we work with people? Often we see it in really good research. And I'm not talking about quantifiable, multifactorial research, but just some basic understanding of customer choices, their key decision criteria, what outcomes they're looking for, what jobs to be done, to use that framework. And I think if you've got money, and we've helped a lot of clients with this with our associates who help us with research, get the right question, get out there and start to learn everything, Tom, from a Vietnam card sort type of really cheap and cheerful out there, all the way to commissioning a more formal piece of research. But think about the question you want to ask, think about what you want to know, and spend some of that money getting yourself smarter and ready for next year. That'd be my opening gambit. Go and do a little bit of research.
I like it. I think that the only thing that I could add to that is a conditional kind of activity, which is what we see clients make big mistakes in doing is they get comfortable with certain stakeholders, okay? And even though power has shifted in their decision-making environment to different types of stakeholders, they fail to capitalize on that. And of course, typically when there's a stakeholder that's gaining power that we're not that comfortable with, we kind of avoid them, and so I think that if you have some funds to invest, and this is really more of an internal investment because I don't know too many research places that make credible influencer maps. That's kind of an activity that's best done internally at a company across a number of different internal stakeholders to try to predict which stakeholders, decision makers in our market are evolving in power. If there's an investment to be made in doing that, whether you got to get people on site to do it, or you got to bribe them with what did you say, Mary? Pizza and beer, so that they'll do it. That would be the only precursor, Sean, to what you're saying. I agree. Like understanding customer needs, stakeholder needs is the beginning of a great plan. If you got that wrong, you got everything wrong. If you have that right, you have a chance. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm agreeing with you. I'm just kind of adding if that precursor step, you know, has not been taken care of, now's
Well,
the
can I
time
can I
to do it.
kind of build on that? Kind of build on that as well, because I think that's a really good idea because it doesn't have to be external. You can get people together, whether it's
Yeah,
beer
that's
and
what
pizza or whether it's offsite, whether it's pulling people from different locations. You've got budget to spend, get people together, but also get that cross-functional. One of the X factors in making our sessions work really well is when you have different perspectives, and not only that, different perspectives from people that could influence the direction you go. No point marketing having a big idea in one direction if sales have an equally big idea in another direction. So that coordination is good. So maybe as well as that, so holding a internal workshop to pool your knowledge and resource, maybe use that a little bit of departmental building, that orchestration view that we talk about. Don't make it narrow in the confines of marketing. Get more people involved. Get the finance folks in. Get the legal folks in. So maybe it's a team building aspect to it as well. Nothing wrong with
So
that.
where I have seen this, I like what you're saying. What I've seen this work really well is, especially in medical devices, where R&D is off in their closet or corner working on some interesting things, and you get everyone together. And what happens in that type of an environment, not only R&D, but like you said, finance and a good salesperson or two is always good to keep that perspective and have it all hands on deck and buy the beer and the pizza or whatever you want just to get people to be incentivized to come in. And then out of that meeting, sometimes what you come up with are some really good concepts. And you can very quickly come up with concept boards that then you can take out to an advisory board, or you can do some qualitative research and get customers to quickly give you feedback on some of those ideas. So it's adding to what you're saying in a more structured way, but then the so what of it is then take those ideas, because you can also very quickly spend that money and get those ideas with some of those types of market research techniques that the whole
I
company benefits from.
And I love that. I was thinking, preparing for this, I had some other thoughts what you could do. And one of them was, Tom, do you remember that job we did in Colombia where we did it's like 1,000 ideas in a day or something like that? It was a really outrageous. How many ideas can we get in a very short space time? So you and I focused with this group for 2, 3 days, was it? I don't remember the length.
Mhm.
We
Yeah,
were there
no,
a while.
2 days.
Yeah, it was 2 days, and we just come up with everything was about ideas, and there was no real filter. So to your point, Mary, it wasn't one of these like let's filter our ideas, then look at execution, then look at adoption. It was just let's come away with a sack full of ideas, and it was fun, energetic, and a lot of good ideas came out of it. So maybe that's another thing you could do. Well, I'm really just building what you said, Mary. Get together and come up with some innovative ideas. The next wave, the new stuff. Think of the
And
new stuff.
and this is a related concept, just building on where you guys are going. But let's just say you feel like you're locked and loaded on your plans, right? But you have some time, get some people together and think about trends and things that could really upend or boost your business. A lot of times we talk about trends and we think about it in the negative, like here's some things that could happen that could really, really hurt. But it's just as big of a mistake to not be ready to capitalize on a trend that could boost your business forward, but just not be ready for it. And so if you feel like you're at the end of the year, you're locked and loaded on your plans, what about just thinking about trends, bringing people together, bringing some experts in, do some trends types of workshops where you can say, hey, here's a couple of scenarios of where this whole market could be going in 3 to 4 years. Are we ready?
So, okay,
Yeah.
so, and not only trends, but why not have a good war game? I mean, there's nothing like a fun war game to really make sure that you're pressure testing what you're planning to do. So, and trends are part of that. If you haven't done a war game, the trends are the winds of change. And in that war game, you'll have tables. One table represents the customers, and sometimes you actually have real customers. And then one table is your company, but then you have people that are sitting at other tables and they're locked and loaded coming in, really thinking like what the competitor. And they prepare. AI helps you prepare even more nowadays for those types of war games. And in just a day and a half, you come out with, so during the rounds, those trends come in, and what happens now that a company bought another company, or that regulations changed, or somebody else launched a new product. So you have these bombs, but they're real bombs that get dropped in there, and people come up with contingency plans, and it can happen very quickly. And then you have a whole set of ideas that you can then be prepared to say, okay, let's filter these. Let's make sure we have plan A, B, and C. And if we have a flaw in our launch plans or in our strategy, let's fix this, because we have a problem.
Yeah, I also wrote down here, deep dive competitor analysis, which is kind of like the same. It's a subset of the war games because I thought that, again, this is from experience. When people are together, they have some idea of their competitors. Sometimes it's an idea that is their worst fears. Oh, this competitor's really strong here, but they've never really gone down the research. You could also host a workshop either as part of a war game or pre to a war game of having people allocated competitors to go deep on with public data, obviously, all above board. Look at their website, look at their published documents, look at their press coverage, everyone's a researcher these days, right? We've got AI and Google. I mean, literally, there's nothing that's publicly available that you will not be able to find out. So maybe a deep dive across your competitive set, thinking of those direct and the indirect competitors, thinking of that future landscape is another good workshop you could hold and spend some of that surplus budget just to increase your competitor IQ.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
One of the most powerful things that I ever saw, and this has to have some bit of fortuitous timing, but related idea is one of our clients one time, this is a client that was in an industry that depended upon the recommendations of pediatricians. And the Pediatric Society was having some kind of congress in South Africa. So we went to South Africa and we were able to get 20 pediatricians in a room who literally built the equivalent of our ability to compete analysis. They told us, as collectively we facilitated this thing, but they told us, you know, what benefits they're seeking and in what order and what weight in terms of how they make a recommendation for a product in this category. And then, of course, they rated all of the competitors on their current perceptions as a group to deliver. And we created this composite perceptual map, customer focused SWOT, whatever you want to call it, that came directly from the mouths of of the customer, the stakeholder group. And I know that that's kind of really reaching because you got all the stars have to align. But maybe that's something that you can do next year with maybe you can convince somebody that you want to earmark your budget surplus for something like that for next year. But
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything more powerful than I've ever seen than that. It was incredible. And that company went on to do very, very, very well because they were dealing in perceptual reality.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one.
I th
These are a little bit more random, but I do think that AI is going to impact everyone. And there are so many courses. Caltech, we're associated with, of course, has a lot of those. You can get your people to sign up for a skill building course that, that, as Sean, you originally said, you have to look at long-term investments. Some of it's in the people, some of it's in the company.
mm,
It actually, the company always benefits from that. So either getting people to sign up for some skills of any type quickly, some certificates, just brings fresh ideas and fresh thinking into your company. And the other way to do it is there's always a bunch of stuff that you just haven't been able to get to, and analysis or something. Have an intern come in and pay them a little bit of money. There's a lot of interns out there right now that are very, very smart, and invest in having them, help you clean up some of the stuff that you just didn't have time to get to. And they might bring some really good ideas into your company too that will help you.
I love the idea of training. That's something else I was thinking of is obviously training it can cover anything, but there's so many skills, AI, using AI, content creation, writing, all sorts that you could actually, as long you have some sort of certification where you can go to bona fide suppliers of education, whether that's through the universities or the business schools or accredited organizations, but actually invest in training people. That's never money wasted, and it can only ever pay back. So I think that's absolutely spot on. If you've got any opportunity to invest in people via training, it shows commitment, and it's just a good thing to do, and you'll get the rewards. That's got a high ROI in my opinion. The other thing I thought about in terms of other deficits that we find, and I think you may have just touched on this, Mary, but data cleanup, with the CRMs and stuff, there's a lot of noise in those systems. We're human. Humans put the data in, so consequently, it's very human data. But take the opportunity to get some expertise in, maybe some data analyst or some coding expert who can come in and look at your, or Salesforce expert can help you just get that turned into more insightful, more accurate, more, it's always worth tidying up your data, I guess. That's my experience. I've never yet seen a data set that says, no, nothing needs fixing here. It's perfect. So maybe that's something else you could invest in.
Yeah. So one other idea, since we're kicking ideas around, is let's say that you're in marketing or strategy, and your deficits are that you're not getting enough creative thinking out of R&D, or that the salespeople don't seem to be paying much attention to your products. They carry a lot in their bag, and you're not the top of their list. You can do some fun incentives, and sponsor some types of challenges that get people in. And again, it's a very healthy way to spend some of that money and goodwill within the company. So
Oh, I agree. So there's one other thing I wanted to kick around with this topic, which is more fundamental, right? So clearly we know that reality is we have budget surpluses, and we all know that you should spend it or lose it. I had my first experiences. I was fairly young, and I was working with a hospital group, and I was in the admin offices, and they were having some lovely new furniture delivered, and it was really fancy stuff, like Italian chairs and that. And I said, that's really fancy. You were having a big refurb. And they said, yeah, we don't really need anything, but we have a budget for office equipment, and if we don't use it, it's going to go. And they were taking away stuff that was perfectly fine. It looked about 4 years old, and replacing it. And I, at the time, I thought that logically this makes no sense. And even the finance people would say, why would we be replacing assets just because we could? But it's because it's a perverse incentive, of course. So I guess the other thing is, and we can't solve this, so this is more of a bit of fun to close it out. But why can't we just accept that if you haven't spent your budget for whatever reason, it just rolls over, or you have a rolling budget, then sure, if you're asking for, 200 grand each year and you're handing it back each year, you're not using it, then at some point your financial planners are going to say, yeah, well, Sean, you don't need that clearly. But don't get this false incentive to make people spend it on nonsense. Now, the stuff we've talked about, I think, is a really good use of it. So I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't make hay while this particular sun is shining, but also it does frustrate me a little that why can't we just have this sort of rolling budget idea where it's the strength of the ideas? But I guess I'd also like world peace. So I guess I'm just one of those kind of people.
That's human nature. I
well,
think it's human nature. If you, even if you're doing well, like I imagine you don't want to turn any budget back in if you're under plan, because what people will say is, if you would have spent that money, maybe you would have
Yeah.
made plan, right? But the nature of business being what it is, even if you're doing well, the idea might be, if I turn this back in, people will say, would you have done even better if you would have spent this money? So I think it's a kind of it's a bit of a dilemma. I agree with you, Sean. It would be great if, we could just say, hey, look, this is what we spent it on. This is what we did. We don't want to spend it just to spend it. We're giving some of this back, but we anticipate being able to use it next year. And these kinds of ideas that we've been talking about right here can help people to say, next year I want to use it on this and this. In fact, can I just take some of this and earmark it for next year to do this?
Okay,
yeah.
Tom, I'm sold. You've done that rare thing of persuading me instantly from my opening position to your position. And those of you that have worked with Tom and I know this is a very rare event indeed. It normally goes on for weeks, our discussions. But
Wow.
you're right.
Oh,
We're
wow.
talking strategic marketing. We're talking strategy and growth. We're talking product and innovation. If you have money in your budget and you can't figure out how to spend that to drive the top line, to drive the revenue, then you should figure out how to spend it. I guess my example of buying unneeded office furniture is probably speaking more to what I'm thinking. What a logical, stupid idea to say, let's spend money we don't need to spend just because we've got it to spend. But you're right. If it's about a strategic growth top line, strategy marketing type spend, you should never run out of things to spend that on. Maybe that's the point, that there's always something to invest in that's going to move that line forward.
Yeah. What I do find with these situations is that it catches people off guard. It's not like for a long time in advance that you have this surplus. Things just change. And so it's almost being very quick to pivot especially as a strategy or a marketer. One day you get the call and it says you have a month and a half to do this. So that's why we wanted to create kind of this punch list of ideas that if you have to quickly think about a way to add value and hopefully you'll see the value on the other end of it too. You'll see your sales go up. Then that's hopefully what you'll get from these ideas that we're kicking around.
Yeah.
So anyway, well,
sure.
thank you for joining us, and we hope that you have this nice problem of having extra money around.